Johnny was a city boy whose father had passed away. His mother was making a reasonable living running an upscale boarding house. He helped his mom run the boarding house out of their home. It was big enough to house 20 or more guests. There were always chores to be taken care of, and he kind of enjoyed getting to hear some of the talk and observe the people who came there to stay. There are gaps of years in his history about which we know little. However, in later years he became a famous writer, and his book became a worldwide bestseller, published in nearly every nation and language. One time he nearly got into serious trouble. A large group of people arrived for a big convention taking place in the city, and after dark all the men went out in a group. His chores were finished and his curiosity got the better of him. So he followed them to see what they were doing and talking about. The city fathers were preparing to detain the leader of the group on serious charges. As they surrounded the party and arrested the leader, one of the officers spotted Johnny in the shadows and grabbed him. He struggled and escaped by the skin of his teeth and made it home by a roundabout way. Shortly after this dramatic and to him frightening evening, Johnny was presented with the claims of Jesus as the one who had died for his sins, and he gave his heart and life over to be a real Christian. He began to associate with other believers, and then one day his uncle came to visit. Uncle Joe had become a leader of a Christian ministry, and he was preparing to go and preach in some foreign lands. He invited Johnny to accompany him, saying they would take another man with them too. Johnny enthusiastically agreed to go along. During the tour of the first island nation, Johnny found himself called upon to do most of the donkey work, and then, to his dismay, he found the converts were looking at Uncle Joe as second in command. The man his uncle had chosen assumed the leadership of that ministry. Johnny just couldn't take that, and he quit. He just picked up his bags and went home. For years he continued to serve the Lord, but he felt bitter about his uncle's colleague. Several years later, Uncle Joe suggested another trip, but he said this time it would just be the two of them. Johnny agreed, and over time he had opportunities to preach the gospel. As his ministry experience grew, he gained more and more self-confidence, and word of his ability began to be noised abroad. You know, almost 30 years after finding Jesus and serving the Lord, he was approached by Pastor Tim, a highly respected minister, and asked if he would be willing to join the team of the very man against whom in early years he had held a grudge, the same man who had supplanted his Uncle Joe. Pastor Tim told Johnny that he had been sent by that same man to ask Johnny to please come and help him. Now, with self-confidence and maturity, he was able to see the big picture. Personal issues were not as important as the task of making Jesus known in lands and places where people had not even heard the gospel once. Johnny decided he would lay aside all bitterness and pride and become the co-worker of the man he had formerly shunned. Johnny wrote a book about his experience as a Christian to tell others what he knew about Jesus. It was not a very long book, but it had a strong emphasis on action, and it was well received. This is the book that has been published in nearly every nation around the world. You probably know Johnny and Uncle Joseph. Johnny, the man in the shadows, who went from curiosity to Christianity, mischief to missionary, deserter to disciple, manhood to maturity, and ultimately became the co-worker of Paul the Apostle. This impulsive young man, who once stood in the shadows of the olive trees in Gethsemane, went on to serve Jesus all his life. He was the only one who heard and recorded the prayers of Jesus in the garden while all the apostles slumbered and slept. When you read the Gospel of Mark, you're reading the book authored and published by Johnny, whom we today call John Mark. His uncle Joseph is perhaps better known to us as Barnabas. There are some lessons we can take from this story. Every one of us has to walk this journey. There are people we are thrown together with in every ministry who outshine us, who irritate us, or from whom we wish to be as far away as possible. Sometimes we are given tasks we do not desire. Other times we are asked to do work someone else should have done. You may encounter many discouragements along the way, but if you keep looking at the big picture, at the incredible impact of the gospel, you will keep on serving the Lord with joy and a sense of personal fulfillment. Don't ask, Lord, what will this man do? Just ask the Lord what he wants you to do, and keep at it. Whatever your ministry currently is, if you are faithful and keep your relationship with the Lord clean, and you are submissive to his leading, God may one day invite you to be part of something much, much bigger.